Hello, my name is Natoya, or Natty. My friends call me Natty. I am making a video today because I feel compelled to talk about this subject. But first, I'll tell you a little bit about me. I am a married 37-year-old woman with 3 children and the fourth one on the way due in August. And I am an ex men's rights activist. Yes, no longer a men's rights activist. I still care about men's issues and I still believe that men are being discriminated against in different levels in society. But I no longer believe that the secular rights model is the best way to solve these problems. For the past 2 years, I've been attending Orthodox Church. So I'm an Orthodox Christian. I'm a catechumen, which means that I'm studying the faith and I'm soon to be baptized, Lord willing. And I have to tell you that this has deeply influenced my worldview, and it is a big reason why I am no longer a men's rights activist. Although I became disillusioned with the political system quite a while ago. But it's not just that. The liberal roots of the men's rights activism world, I don't agree with. So I can't really continue to use that term or even advocate for things in the same way. But today I want to talk about something related. I'm not really a content creator. This is like my second video on my channel, although there is a playlist of me being interviewed on other people's channels. So you can have a look at what I've done in the past. Today I want to talk about the problem of the manosphere. The problem of the manosphere, which includes MGTOW, red pill, pro masculinity, sort of, and men's rights, because they overlap. Although some people within the men's rights sphere are not really concerned with the kind of gender, cultural war stuff, they're just concerned with the legal aspect. But I was part of the type of people that were involved in the crossover of the culture war and advocating for political change. So I kind of know a lot about the manosphere because of that. I was involved for about 5 to 6 years in promoting men's rights stuff. I admined various Facebook groups and I helped to organise an event called Messages for Men for 3 years, among other bits and pieces that I'm not going to go on about now, but you can find out if you want to. So I made a video recently called The Transformation of the Family / The Handmaid's Tale. And it's all about me predicting what I think is going to happen next. It's me analysing an article by a woman called Miri AF. She's got a blog about conspiracy stuff. And I was surprised to find that someone on the internet agreed with my thoughts. It was quite validating because I realised that women are going to be reduced down to just rent a womb, surrogate mothers. Well, not mothers, just surrogates. And their use in society is going to be questioned significantly, among other things. So if you want to watch that video, you can. It is linked to this, but I'm going to try and keep this succinct and not too long because I have loads and loads and loads and loads and loads to say because I was involved for 6 years. So, and I argued with a lot of people and I read a lot of books. And so if anyone's qualified to talk about this, I feel that I am. I know all the different types of perspectives. I suppose the reason the problem of the manosphere is coming up is because of Andrew Tate and Just Pearly Things and some of the other types who are getting attention. You know, before Kevin Samuels died, I was watching his arc, his journey, you know, and he led Pearly Things up here where she is now, right? But you know, both of these two figures are talking about things that have been spoken about in the manosphere for like 5 years now, or longer in some cases. There have been some blogs that have been on the internet for 15 years or more. There are a few very, very influential content creators who I would love to do a critique of right now, but I'm not going to. But they've been around a very long time. And it's important to realize the roots of these things, the roots of where their ideas comes from. And so, the manosphere is inherently kind of liberal at its core. Even if some are more conservative than others, it's still got liberalism at its core. It's still extreme. It still embraces modernity, and modernity is not just about creating a modern invention. It's a whole philosophy. It's a whole worldview, right? And we wouldn't have liberalism without modernity, really. So, or at least not in the way that we have it now. Anyway, the problem with the manosphere is that it doesn't understand why women are important. Okay? It may have mentioned nuanced points in the past, but where we're at now, it completely rejects that women are useful in any way, apart from having a child, using their womb, having sex and providing sexual gratification, and maybe a nice thing to look at. And that is why people like Pearl and Andrew and others are very focused on talking about where women have gone wrong, the fact that they're all feminists and they're all entitled, narcissistic harpies. But also because they've lost the belief that women are of any use. And it's not just them, as you know. The other side of it is the whole trans versus TERF thing going on, and the What is a Woman film made by Matt Walsh, which talks all about this, right? The fact that the government in the UK and America and other parts of the West are literally erasing the concept of a woman. Yeah. This makes me sound like, a radfem, but this is where the radfem and maybe the traditional conservative intersect. But truth is truth at the end of the day. If somebody on the other side is saying some truth, I'm not going to reject it just because they're a feminist. There are aspects of feminist theory that are very interesting. It's just they reorient it from patriarchy theory, which is heavily flawed. And there's also a lot of truth and aspects from the men's rights side, which has gynocentric theory at its roots. Most people don't really understand that gynocentric theory is more complicated than you may think. But that's probably a video for another time. I'm probably going to upset the apple cart a lot by talking about that. But anyway, so what I'm saying here is that this eradication of women is happening because both sides are doing it. And if you remember that, or if you recognize, like me, that left and right, conservative, liberal, or however the paradigm plays out for you, are controlled by the same puppet masters, stakeholders, international organizations, oligarchs, whatever. They're controlled by the same people. They're funded by the same people. They are going in the same direction. And I'm telling you that the direction is that they want to eradicate dimorphism, and they have decided that actually men are more useful. Now, this sounds ridiculous because I recognize that men have been discriminated against and that men are toxic as the narrative promoted. But that's kind of because what they've done is a kind of holistic, virtuous masculinity has been told is doesn't exist, or it's men have been reduced down to parts and compartmentalized. And the same thing is happening to women, but in a different way. But I actually think what's going to happen, what they're trying to engineer, is that men will still be useful because men can imitate women, right, by being trans, and they'll probably be better at it. Stick with that point, right? They view that men can be better women than women can. They really do. And this Andrew Tate said this. He may have said it in jest, perhaps, but I'm not sure. He said that that it'd be better to get with a good-looking trans person, a male to female trans, than it would to be get with an ugly woman. And I've actually had arguments online with people I sort of associated with before who have said similar radical things. And I'm like, oh, you're just joking and trying to trigger me or someone else. And they're like, no, no, no. They genuinely think that men could make better women. So I actually think that the social engineers are do agree with that. That's where I'm at now. And you can reject that as a ridiculous conspiracy if you want to. But if you think about it, if you ask people who are men, especially, but some women, I suppose, like Pearl, if you ask them what they think of women, what is good about a woman? What does she provide? What value does she give? What is unique about a woman? What does she do better than a man? What is her arena? What feminine essence has she got? Yeah. I asked a couple of people on Twitter yesterday, and they who are like pro manosphere talking points, and they said, you know, she can give birth and she has sex with me and all that, like I said already. And I was like, is that it? Is that it? Are you serious? Like, there's nothing else. So you're basically like complaining about how horrible women have become in modern women. And then if I ask you to tell me what's good about a woman, that not a modern woman, just a woman or a traditional woman, whatever you think a woman should be, that's what you say. Like, some of them may just still be too reactive and red pill rage, but others, I've noticed, the whole thing is based on women being viewed at in a utilitarian way, and they will have relationships with them in a pragmatic way, right? So when they complain about a gold digger, it's like, well, but you don't really recognize her as a full person. You don't recognize that she has intelligence. You don't recognize that she has her own unique abilities. You don't recognize that her role as a mother and as a nurturer is unique to her as a woman, and that she could probably provide something that you can't, or at least not do as well. Because I recognize that men and women are adaptive. You know, women can do men's jobs, men can do women's jobs. They don't always do them very well. And there are some people that may be just as good, but they are the exception, not the rule. And so, like, we have had more cooperative relationship with each other in the past. And it's after the Industrial Revolution that we became more adversarial, because men and women used to work together within the home, or at least their business that they were engaging in ran out of the home or more local. And then suddenly we had the Industrial Revolution, and men go out to factories and they start using machines, and they have a new range of work that didn't exist before. And I don't think it should be a surprise to anyone that women eventually wanted to follow them because they were left at home, and you know, they weren't really given a kind of, well, it's so important for you girls to stay at home because of this, and this. They were the kind of chauvinism and androcentrism came out, because if you think about it, after the Second World War, all these men had been unnecessarily slaughtered and killed in those horrible brother wars that shouldn't have happened. But all the men that were left, and then we get this fake level of prosperity, especially in America, they needed to cater to men. Like, the elites needed to say, okay, men, you did this horrible sacrifice for us. You know what? We're gonna like treat you like a king now. And your women are gonna treat you like a king. And they're gonna be submissive to you. And this culture was promoted. And I know that that wasn't like that in all realities. 50s housewife probably had a good time most of the time, as in like it wasn't that bad. But my point is that there was something shifted and changed where men's focus became external and not internal anymore because they were concentrating on capitalism and making profits for other companies. And I don't think people discuss that mental shift enough in how it affected women because that left a void. And then feminism comes in, again, funded by some horrible social eugenical types who are like, how can we take advantage of this situation? And then they fund feminism and say to women, well, this is your solution. Join the feminist movement, right? Now, I'm not saying that there weren't any women involved in helping to design it, but we have to be very honest that it was men who funded it. So, most women didn't want necessarily to become careerist girl bosses, but that's where we've ended up now, after all 100 years of it, right? Most women just wanted a part-time role. They wanted to feel useful. They wanted to be involved in this new external worldview. And we also need to talk about how, at the time, these young boomers would have seen the moon landing, right? And they would have thought, oh, we're going to colonize space one day. And the women need to stay at home while we develop this. And can you imagine how that would affect women psychologically? I'm thinking about it. If, like, I watch the moon landing on the TV with my husband, they start talking about all the possibilities of this and that. And I'm thinking, hang on, I'm at home. I'm still connected with the local area a bit. You're not as much as me. And now you're talking about how great it would be to live in space in a space station or something. Like, what's wrong with what we've got here? What use will a woman have in space? I'm serious. Like, what use? She won't have any use. If her intelligence is not valued because she's deemed that she's too irrational, too emotional to be useful, her intuition is not valued because intuition is part of that whole thing. It's all woo woo and whatever. Men make better women. Remember, I told you that before. Like, what else? All the kind of soft feminine skills that make a house a home and just make daily life nice, and just the whole thing that women do for their families. If you're going to live in a pod on Mars, is that going to be useful? Is it still going to be useful? And I think the elites have decided it's not. And I really think that subconsciously, a lot of the manosphere has accepted that argument, especially when they say to me, this is just how things are now. We've progressed past all of this, or these tradcons, proto-feminists. Oh, that's another argument that I hate having. Um, and how we're never going to go back, and we shouldn't want to go back. And like, they are, if you're going to talk about the radicals, to be honest, they're more radical than feminists, because feminists try to use gynocentrism against men and say, you need to look after us and protect us from the horrible patriarchy, and you need to atone, right? But they're not necessarily at least normie feminism. They're not rejecting like that women are different, yeah, or that they're recognizing the difference in women. But a lot of this kind of acceptance of the new technocratic era stuff that happens in the manosphere, some of it's deliberate and some of it's not. They just haven't examined it in themselves. They're more radical, right? They are the radicals. because they're saying that, you know, we'll go out there and do this, and women just need to tag along and be our helpmeets, and that's all they're useful for, and then when they're not useful because they don't want to do that necessarily, because their side of things are not being addressed, then they're going to be eradicated or just reduced down to body parts for sex and a womb. And I sound ridiculous, I know, but this is where this goes, especially if in the manosphere they can't recognise what is good about women. And the other thing is, I understand that a lot of the behaviour of women online doesn't help, right? But there are plenty of women who promote traditional values, femininity, they're just real about what it's like to be a housewife and what it's like to have a homestead, blah, blah, blah. There's a whole world of that going on. And all of these men in red pill rage don't seem to know they exist. And then they also like to spoil the well by saying, well, a lot of them are just going to divorce their husbands anyway. And it's like, actually, probably not. They're probably not going to do that. Right? And then that leads me on to my final point, because otherwise I will keep going on and on and on and on. No, hang on. I've got 2 more things to say. And then I'll shut up, because otherwise I'll go on to like a couple of hour long video. So women, when you look at attachment theory, which is one of the secular models in psychology, that is useful. A woman attaches to the baby in the womb. The baby recognizes her voice. Then the baby is born, hopefully by home birth or natural birth. And then, because the natural birthing process is like the hero's journey for women, where they get to connect with another side of their brain in a different way. God helps them get through it, and they feel a sense of real achievement afterwards. Stop taking away birth from women. Don't have cesareans if you can help it, please, women. Anyway, honestly, it's so much better when you have natural birth. You can do it. After that, you're breastfeeding your baby and you attach to the baby. The baby doesn't recognize it's separate from you until it's older. You are the primary caregiver, the most important to the child, and until they get to about 18 months, then it starts to break down and the father becomes more and more important. Over 6 years old, then he needs to start helping the child to take more risks, and the masculine presence is more important eventually. I mean, it's not a competition because they're always both there, but there's different stages in a child's life where different things are needed. And in the first 6 years, a child needs a woman who is in tune with the child's emotions. This is why women are emotional, because they need to become attuned to their toddler's irrational tantrums, right? They need to mold that child to become stable in themselves. This is extremely important. And we have 2 generations now of men and women who don't have good attachments with their mothers, hence why they don't understand what a good woman is or a good mother is. This same quality is there for her to look after the elderly or do other types of care work in the community, and just to look after everyone. In the Orthodox Church, everyone always talks about how there's always a babushka who is like the old Russian lady or a different nationality who looks after everyone and matchmakes for people and stuff. She knows everyone's business, but she's discreet, right? She's looking after the emotional well-being of the whole church, including the priest. And one thing I like about the Orthodox Church is my priest has just been ordained recently, and his mentor, this other priest, he said to us, the members of the parish, he said, when you first get ordained, you're like on a high for a few weeks, and then afterwards you get a significant spiritual attack because Satan is not happy that you've become a priest. And he said, so he might act differently, he might become a bit off, something might happen that you'll be like questioning him a bit or something. And it's your job as the parish, members of the parish, to look after him as it is for him to look after you. It's a reciprocal relationship. So as much as he is now becoming a kind of father to you, at the same time, you need to look after him. And it will be the babushkas that will look after him. And I don't hear the manosphere ever talk about this kind of dynamic. Like, your grandma is thought of generally as this woman who looks after you psychologically for a reason, for good reason, right? Because she's past her childbearing years, all her use is gone, the wool and all that. She's not good looking anymore, but she's developed wisdom, she's developed patience, she looks after everyone together in the home. Like, I have some distant cousins. They had a matriarch who was clearly this feminine force, matriarchal force in that family. She kept everyone together. She monitored all the disputes between each other. She gave people advice. She cooked for everyone. She was just looking after everyone, right? And, she was the archetype of the Theotokos, which is what we call Mary in the Orthodox Church, which is another reason why we have issues in society, because we don't recognize the importance of the Theotokos anymore, or Theotokos. Is someone going to correct my grammar or pronunciation? We don't do that in modern society. Protestantism rejected Mary quite a lot because of the way the Catholics treat Mary, and that's a whole other thing. But it's very sad that she doesn't have the reverence that she should have. And I'm saying that there are women out there who clearly represent that archetype of the kind of caring mother who puts the veil over everyone. This is what's good about women, right? Men do that in a different way. You've got the patriarchal father archetype that's completely in a masculine realm. But in the manosphere, it's like they just want to, because they're so upset about feminism, because if I was going to be less charitable about things with them, I would say that they view feminism as this horrible socialist force, this ideology that stops their utopian view of capitalism working. And it's like, guess what, guys? Capitalism is not real. It was an illusion. It is an illusion. The free market, it's an illusion. We've never had a free market. You could argue before the Federal Reserve in America maybe had a bit of a free market. And I could say that there are some aspects of cottage industries that could have small aspects of the free market. But overall, doesn't exist. Didn't exist. It's why, people like Henry Ford are like shat on, because he tried. He realized that, well, when you have a free market, anyway, I'm not going to go on about other examples in history of things, but my point is that there needs to be an examination of their liberal rooted worldview and modernism, because you can't just sit there and be like, modern women are this and modern women are that, and then not expect the fact that modern men have been affected in an adverse way, but in a different way. And they would probably say, oh, it's because they've been feminized. It's not just because they've been feminized, it's because they believed in the free market stuff. The carrots. They were given this carrot, and that profit making was above all, was what you should be concentrating on, instead of virtue and family values. Like, honestly, there's so much that can be said here. There are so many people on the internet who write excellent articles and things that are expressing this better than me. But like, honestly. Anyway, so I've said that, but my last point is that, and this is where I'm going to get some hate probably, one of the main arguments and push things, the narratives in the red pill world, especially in the MGTOW circles, is that a woman, once a woman becomes a feminist, she goes on the cock carousel, or she has a long-term boyfriend and she gets rid of him, and then she realizes when she's in her early 30s that, oh my gosh, I need a husband. So it's this alpha fucks, I don't want to swear, but FUX, beta bucks thing. Now, I am not saying that never happens. What I am saying is that shame on you for falling for this cold-hearted Darwinism. I mean, that's a whole another conversation as well. But the evolutionary biology stuff is somewhat insightful, but we are not animals. We are made in God's image, right? Moving on from that, we need to remember that. Moving on from that, I reached the age of 26, having rejected feminism, read all this stuff on the internet, got a couple of books, and was like, oh my gosh, what have I bought into? Like, even though I rejected feminism at a younger age, I still bought into a lot of liberal stuff. And I was like, oh, I really felt the burden. And I met my husband about, well, it was I was before 26, but I met my husband at 26, right? And he was also a liberal, and he was just like, just a pro-capitalist guy, didn't really think too much into these things. And when he met, and I said to him, I don't want to live like this anymore. I've never really truly been comfortable with a lot of this stuff. And he was like, you know what? Me neither. And then we just went on this journey together. So, by the standards that a lot of the manosphere talks about, I would have been washed up, couldn't pair bond. Because, I used to work in the music industry and so did him. And people get around, right? But, we made it work. We were equally yoked. And I understand the insecurity of men meeting a woman who slept around or whatever, and he hasn't. They're not equally yoked, right? But this idea that once a woman reaches a certain age and she realizes the truth and wants to start repenting and, not being degenerate or not being liberal anymore, that she is washed up goods and that's that. That is disgusting and just spiteful. Have some forgiveness. Like, if you're a Christian, you are commanded to forgive. But even if you're not a Christian, where's your forgiveness? All of us are victims of what's happened in society. We've all been brainwashed. We've all had intense propaganda, right? And I've just spent a long time in this video talking about the propaganda that the manosphere is not addressing about themselves. I forgive them for not doing that, right? I forgive the boomers for thinking we're going to colonize space. I forgive everyone, yeah? Forgive women. Just hold your hand out and say, this is what good women are. This is what women bring. Do you want to be like that? Yes or no? I forgive you. I forgive you. This is what needs to happen. And I know I'm going to get all this annoying, but I'm used to it. Like, just sit down and really think about what's been done to us, all of us. You are not perfect. You were a sinner. If you're not a Christian, you're just not perfect, right? You have not examined all parts of yourself. How have you contributed? I have contributed to this mess by promoting some manosphere stuff in the past. And I realized that there are some, especially MGTOW types, who were transhumanists from the beginning. And if I'd have known that, I would have been absolutely horrified because I've always thought transhumanism was disgusting and anti-human. Okay? They saw the MGTOW stuff as a way to, just to promote their worldview a bit more. And I'm not decided exactly if any of that is conspiratorial, but either way, it's not good. But forgive them. Just just move on. Like, how can you be, especially the MGTOWs, how can you be that and still have the red pill rage and anger and bitterness? Like, actually, forgiveness is kind of demanded of you if that's the life that you want to go. You don't have to marry these women, but you can forgive them. And I think that the women, just, you can achieve repentance without losing your self respect. It is possible. You don't need to go all the way that Pearl's gone, right? No offense, Pearl, but she does sort of come across as someone who's really working too hard. It's like, what have you done, Pearl? Have you got a guilty conscience? I don't know, right? But just, it is possible for people to change. Like, this belief that change is possible seems to have just disappeared. The manosphere doesn't recognize it. The red pill worldview doesn't recognize it. It's just like, you're damaged goods, you'll be on the scrap heap. It's like, oh, right, okay, fine. So you're just going to be happy with your sex bot AI sex bot or tranny as a solution to any sexual urges in the future. Is that it? It's not just that. There is companionship and intimacy and all the things that women are supposed to be good at. Um, just like, really just have a think about it. I believe that there's a generation of women in my generation, millennials, that if they really sat down, repented properly, had a look at themselves, and just forgave themselves and realized that change is possible, that transformation is possible, then, we would have a much more positive, fruitful future. Right now, everyone's just accepting it's the end of the world. Um, and it's not. Okay, I think I've run out of steam now. I think I've said what I need to say. But have some grace. Learn what grace is. Um, please, I urge you, all of you, we've all been shafted, all of us, in different ways. Some are more immoral than others, but again, we all need to just admit that and stop looking at each other and pointing. All right. Summary is that the manosphere has forgotten what's good about women and what they bring to the table and what strengths they have. And they've embraced an extremely utilitarian worldview, maybe because they're so angry. But I think it's because that is the worldview they have about other things, about themselves and about the world. And they need to address that. I think that women, if you're going to admit that you have fallen for stuff in the past, just don't lose your self respect and just have some patience with the men. You can forgive them back. Yeah. All right. I think that's all I have to say. 36 minutes. Whoa. I wanted to do 30. But I did a few takes before this, and I really should need to do other things now. Um, please watch my other video if you're so inclined. I appreciate any feedback. Any of this red pill splaining. Oh yeah, please. You don't need to red pill splain to me. If I see any text and comments or whatever with people saying, but women blah blah blah, but hypergamy blah blah blah, it's like, I probably read about this before you became an adult if you're a young man. I mean, just chill. I know. I just disagree with you. Can you accept that? All right. Take care. God bless. And hopefully maybe I'll be doing another video to talk about some other stuff to do with men's rights that I worked out. But I don't know when that will be. So don't lose yourself on the internet. Bye.